Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sagar and Jetty. It's Wednesday. That means it's time for Today in Media. That's when my co-host Amber and Athie and I go over the stupidest, most foolish takes that we've seen. Amber, we're going to start off with Van Jones comparing comparing the Red Wedding to this Trump event. So why don't we take a look?
I think we wouldn't have made it back out alive. I think it would have been like the Red Wedding, you know, in Game of Thrones. Like,
why is any news organization willing to go to that party if they've been called fake? They've been called the enemy of America by the president. Anybody but Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post shouldn't go, right?
Listen, I'm sure they have good hors d'oeuvres, but if I were a reporter, I wouldn't eat any of them.
All right, so for our viewers who don't watch Game of Thrones, the Red Wedding is basically this huge murderous event where basically an entire family was killed off while attending a wedding. So Van Jones makes this ridiculous joke that if CNN were to attend the White House Christmas party, that Trump would somehow try to kill off CNN.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so ridiculous. This entire thing was a political stunt from the very get-go. They refused to attend the party, but they said that they were going to stand in the background, aka they were going to stand in the background and not enjoy the festivities. It was all built on their resistance brand in order to cater to their liberal viewers, but we see right through it. This type of junk is exactly why nobody trusts or watches them anymore. But we're going to go next, also to CNN, where they had a total and complete blackout of the Corrine Brown verdict. Now, Amber has been really good on seeing what the networks do and do not cover. So break it down for us, Amber.
Right. So basically, every news outlet has covered this story except for CNN.
Right.
So CNN hasn't showed anything about her sentencing on air or on their website. MSNBC has not shown anything on air. The only thing they have on their website is a quote from another person's story on the Rachel Maddow blog. Now, this story is really important because Corrine Brown is a former representative from Florida. She's a Democrat, and she was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for tax and wire fraud.
That's insane. So think about it. A former Democratic congresswoman who served 12 years in the U.S., 12 terms in the U.S. House, was convicted of tax fraud, taking money from a children's charity. Yeah. And that's not newsworthy, but somehow reporting on Trump's McDonald's order is, which they ran like 6 different times. They're like, oh my, it was basically, like, look how fat and how much of a rube the president is. This just shows exactly, as I said, why nobody watches them. But we're going to move on. We're going to talk about Chris Matthews, and he had this to say about the president's decision today to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem.
And a couple more points in Alabama. Don't think this isn't related to Alabama next week. It is related because it's the Christian evangelicals down there with their crazy ideas about Israel, which is, I don't know, mythical. They don't understand the situation over there and how tricky it is ethnically and tribally. They don't care because it's a religious belief. Trump's playing to that this week. You watch him.
Okay, wow. So there's a lot of problems that are happening in that clip. Now, Chris obviously is incredibly ignorant and also quite insulting to evangelicals in which he said, what did he refer to it as? Some sort of like fairy tale, basically?
A myth, yeah, a myth.
I mean, come on, man. I'm like, you wonder why religious voters don't trust the media? It's because they're openly disdained on national television, just like this. There's a lot of religious reasons for wanting to move the U.S. Embassy towards Jerusalem, but there's also a lot of political reasons. And to hear Palestinian propaganda come out of some of our national political hosts is really troubling.
Right, and Matthews also frames this as if it's something that Trump just decided out of nowhere. This is a campaign promise. Donald Trump ran on recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and as he ran on moving the embassy to Jerusalem.
And he's not the first. He is keeping a
campaign promise.
Yes.
You're right, he's not the first.
Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama all said that they were going to do it. Absolutely did not happen.
Yep.
Trump is actually the first president to do what he said he was going to do, which is why I think a lot of people voted for him. But we'll move on. We'll talk about the Hill. So I don't know if you guys have seen some of these really horrific and creepy sexual harassment allegations against Representative John Conyers, who resigned yesterday. So Conyers was misidentified by our friends over at the Hill as a Republican in their copy. And I think, so look, was it an egregious error? I don't know. But I think it does go to some sort of confirmation bias, and then the fact that it took them so long to correct it is definitely a problem.
Yeah, that's the main issue for me. I understand, having a typo where you put an R instead of a D or some kind of mistake happens. We all do that in our copy sometimes. But it took them almost 2 hours to correct the mistake after people were, slamming them on Twitter for what they had done.
Remember, The Hill is one of the most distributed media outlets on social media. That's their entire game. So think about that. How many people who just casually read the news, maybe that's the first time they'd ever heard of John Conyers, saw that and thought that the guy was a Republican, when in fact he was the longest serving Democrat in the entire U.S. House.
This is a really reminiscent of when the New York Times was talking about the trial of U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, and they listed him as a Republican in their copy as well. So kind of a recurring theme here.
There you go. It seems like a lot of reporters out there believe only that Republicans can do bad things and subconsciously put that into some of their stories. But we're going to close out with a Guardian columnist comparing the Trump administration's rollback of some monuments which did not even exist until last year as worse or somehow equivalent to 9/11. Speechless.
I don't even know what to say about this. I mean, how insulting is this to the families of people who died in 9/11? Thousands of people were killed by evil terrorists who flew planes into buildings, and somehow reducing the amount of federal land that is given protection is equivalent to that terrorist attack. This is a joke.
Schofield is a moron, and he's disgusting, obviously. We probably all could agree with that. But what I want to point out to everybody is that if a Republican or somebody on the right were to make such a repulsive, disgusting, morally bankrupt comparison, they would be eviscerated. You would have CNN, New York Times reporters dogging that person's company to make sure that that person was fired. They would be tweeting updates saying, "Oh, sources within organization tell me that that they're completely breaking away." The editor-in-chief would have to issue an apology. Not a damn word.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
No one is talking about this.
Nobody.
This tweet has no attention. And that's why we thought it was so important to put as the #1 thing on Today in Media today, because we think people should know that this guy is saying something so blatantly disgusting and just ridiculous and laughable.
It's so morally bankrupt, it's so irresponsible, and it's really just, it shows you exactly where the left's rhetoric is today. But thank you guys so much for joining us. That is Today in Media. We'll be back at you on Friday with 5 more foolish takes, but this time I'll be with Julia Nista.